Noah was actually from Berlin. He first came to Shanesville as a teenager. They had a select school here, which was better than the public schools of the time. He would come here for school in the summer, and then in the winter he would return to East Holmes and would teach country school there to the kids. He then trained under Dr. Joel Pomerane, who you're all familiar with Pomerane Hospital, one of the pioneer doctors of the area. In his early 20s, he started practicing in Berlin and then went into the Civil War. He was promoted to second lieutenant. In January 1863, he went to battle at Stones River, and that was one of the highest ratio of casualties in that battle of the entire Civil War. In fact, when we were talking about John Dorshuk and the bank robbery, John Roth, the Civil War veteran there who chased the thieves, he was also in Stones River and was shot in the knee. Dr. Noah Yoder was commanded to lead his men up over a ridge, and when they got to the top, the rebels were right in front of them. They were shot to pieces. Dr. Yoder was shot 8 times that day. The first shot went through his collarbone and out near his spine. Without his medical training, he certainly would have bled to death, but he knew how to stop the blood and survived the initial wound. Several men went up and grabbed him and tried to pull him back to safety, and each of them got shot. He was eventually left at a tree stump. The line of fire moved up past him. He was shot. He lost a fingertip from one shot. As he was being carried, he was shot in the left leg below the knee, which fractured the leg. He was also shot in the abdomen. In fact, he even had a wheel from a cannon crush one of his feet. As the line moved past him, one of the rebels saw him and thought for certain that he was dying, and actually went to the river and got water and brought it back to him. However, he did not die that day. He survived. 2 of his brothers, one of them who nursed him for several months in the military hospital, his 2 brothers were killed in action. However, he returned home. He always had nerve damage after that. He was said that he had to drink to calm his nerves, and also gangrene had set in on his leg, and so he had to have it amputated and had a wooden leg. He came back and practiced at Berlin. A few years later, Dr. Selden here in town had moved to New Philadelphia, and so he bought his practice and came to live here in Shanesville. If you go down Main Street, on the north side, a little past Troyer Furniture, there's a brick house that's almost out on the sidewalk. That's where Dr. Yoder's family lived in the 1870s. He served a lot of the area around Shanesville, and in the spring of 1877, he traveled north to Barrs Mills. There had been a lot of rain. He reached the bridge at Barrs Mills, and there was a stretch of about 200 yards where there was 2 to 3 feet of water. He was determined to reach his patient, so he took his team of wagons across the bridge. However, with the 3 feet of water, he could not judge where the edge was. There was an embankment on the side of the bridge, and one of the wagon wheels went off, and he fell into the water. His assistant, who was with him, was healthy and reached shore without any trouble. However, because of his injuries from the war, he was swept downstream, and they found his body the following day. And I'll just set this here now if anyone would like to see that. There's an article there about his death. That's a photo of him and his wife, Catherine. About 3.5 years after the accident, his widow and his children were really struggling. Because his injury was determined not to be military related, they did not receive his pension until several years after his death. He had 4 daughters and a son. A couple of the daughters ended up living with other families here in town and doing house service for them and living with them to make money. About 3.5 years after Dr. Yoder's death, his wife and his children decided that they should go celebrate on New Year's Eve at Gaylor's Hall. His wife Catherine and his 6-year-old son Milty were near the center of the 2nd floor at the time that it crashed. Those who were in the center, which was where the stove were the ones who were hurt the worst. Catherine, she had her arms around Milty and ended up herself. And we have photos also of their 4 daughters. If you follow us on Facebook, the oldest daughter was writing letters to her uncle that we shared on Facebook. Dr. Yoder's half-brother was Aaron Miller. He was one of the first mayors of Shanesville, as well as a doctor here for several years. He also died prematurely on a West Coast trip around 1908. He developed a carbuncle on his neck and developed blood poisoning from that. We really do not have a good history with doctors here in Shanesville. As many of you know, they built the clinic in the 1960s to try to revive Shanesville, and neither of those doctors are buried here, but Dr. Klingler from Baltic, he set up an office here, and he was also killed traveling in the West in Colorado. Their camper was hit a semi-trailer and crashed and killed 5 of his family. And then Dr. Miracle, who was buried over at East Lawn, replaced him, and he died at the age of 47 of leukemia. Getting back to Dr. Yoder, so there's also another son here, Leonidas, that died of diphtheria a couple of years before the doctor died. They left 4 daughters who were orphaned then. And the oldest one went to live with one of the uncles. The other 3 were in an orphanage, but a few years later, I believe they were all not reunited in the same house, but in the same town in Missouri. So I think that's all of the stops that I have planned. If you'll just, if you have any questions about your own history here, any ancestors, we have information if you would like to find out. I have a transcript here and would be glad to help you out later. But we have some more arrangements here. As we were talking about J.G. Zahner back there, who was a minister for 40 years here in Shanesville. We happen to have a minister who's still with us who spent 40 years in the area in Baltic, Reverend David Hamill, or as I call him, Dad. And he's going to have a closing prayer for us, and when he's done, we're going to have a moment of silence and then taps. So thank you for coming tonight.